Hello friends, Magnet back here with another part of Oxygen Not Included, Spaced Out. Or no, this is not Spaced Out, this is the base game. I don't know why I keep saying that. But, just the base game of Oxygen Not Included. We're going through a full walkthrough here. Where we left off last time was getting our natural gas going. Since we needed to wait a little bit before that was going to be ready, I decided to take a small break and coming back in another video. So here we go. We do have most of the things set up. Let's start getting into our natural gas area. So what we're going to want to do is, if you did deconstruct these doors to get the extra steel, you should now have enough to build a couple of things. The first one is just going to be this gas pump. By the way, we should reroute these pipes so we don't get confused. So, there. So I will reroute the, this is like our exhaust to get rid of all the stuff that we don't want down in our base. I'll create a gas pump in here, and I'm going to put this on some manual switches here for just a second. This is only going to happen because this is dormant. If this was not dormant, you would need to get in here with suits more than likely, or just accept that your dupes are going to get burned or injured while doing this, which is not pleasant to think about, but yeah. Alright, so we're going to start routing this down. Oh, sorry, I'm building out of the wrong material. I want to route this down with insulated pipe, because this is going to be very hot material. So I'll route it down like this. Let's get this one a little bit more out of the way. I can actually just jump it over right here, so never mind, that's not that big of a deal. Rotate this. Whoops, wrong button. We're just going to run this all the way down to that chamber that we set up that's just going to be containing our natural gas. First, I want to vacuum all the stuff out of here that's already here. Mostly oxygen, but I don't want this oxygen to be getting mixed in because I don't want to send it into my generators, and I'd really rather not have to filter it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn these on, but I am not blowing them out into a vent or anything like that because my base is too highly pressurized. This is likely going to happen to you at some point, especially if you're doing the same oxygen creation method that I am, because there's not a hard limit on when these can't keep producing. So since I'm overpressurized and I don't have access to plastic right now, I'm just going to place a bunch of gas reservoirs and fill up the reservoirs with whatever comes out of there, and then I can just deconstruct them and recreate them over and over if I want to. So I'm just going to do something like that to vacuum this out for the time being. The other thing you can do is you can just set the output of these onto a vent, so eventually it will all get out. Or you can try to vent it in an area that's already low pressure to try to like kind of trick it and let you vent even though you're not necessarily supposed to. There's a couple things you could do there, but I'm just going to go with this method only because it's the most like basic and understandable. For our natural gas line, which is coming across here, I'm just going to want to dump it somewhere in here, but I don't want to start this until I actually have the gas all vacuumed out of there. So I'm going to turn this off for now. I'm also going to use conductive wire to run into this pump, because this is going to be eventually totally sealed, and I don't want to have to go back and replace that wire if I want it to be on conductive wire. I don't want to have to open this up again once I close it for good. So yeah, that's what we're doing there. Let's see, what else do we need here? We will eventually need a pump to pump the natural gas out. So you will also want a steel pump. You can also run it into these gas reservoirs, but a lot of the time it will overheat them because the natural gas will be so hot. And it's not really worth using steel on it, so this is unfortunately going to be a little bit inefficient. If you have a lot of steel, then you could get away with doing this otherwise. Then all we need to do is run it into there, but we need to put this on some kind of automation first. So I'm going to hook this up to, first of all, I'm just going to hook it up to a wire. If it's only hooked up to a wire, then it won't run until you complete the rest of what's going to be in there. So I'm just going to wait, and we'll get this hooked up the rest of the way in just a bit. Only because I don't want it to start pumping into my natural gas generators. Also, we are going to need insulated gas pipes to carry the byproduct of carbon dioxide out of here, and I'm just going to put it straight into my line that is for venting the carbon dioxide that would normally come from the bottom of my base, since that'll just blow it out into space anyway. So Yeah, we'll call that one good too. The other stuff that we're going to need in the bottom of this is I usually will like to put a couple of pumps here, gas pumps. These are not always going to be running. They're only going to be running when we get to a high pressure, and this is not going to matter too much until we start getting our petroleum generators up. You will need this, but I'm not going to hook it up all the way until it's time to get that in there. I just want you to be aware that that is a thing that you'll need to deal with. So we'll just kind of pre-run this line, and we'll hook it all the way up later. I would normally hook it up to this line to also be vented out into space, and I do want to vent all this stuff out into space. It's going to be a ton of carbon dioxide, but there's so much that I can't just send it all in one line. It's all going to get blocked. This will produce a lot later in the game, so I'm just going to leave it like this for right now. The other thing I'm going to need is... Oh, by the way, we'll do the same thing, and we'll just hook this up to a wire to keep it off for right now. The other thing I'm going to want in the bottom of this is a liquid pump, because we're going to be producing polluted water, both from the natural gas and from the petroleum generators. So I'm just going to hook up that. I need to put that on automation also, which should be kind of a routine by now, of only pumping out if it's above a certain amount of water. I don't want to waste energy pumping like 3 drops of water at a time. I really would rather assure that this can be turned on when it's going to be pumping at its full capacity. Almost vacuumed out in here. So, when we do produce any polluted water, I'm just going to want to run this right into a line that sends it into eventually be cleaned. We're going to just follow this all the way there. Eventually be cleaned by these water sieves and into my water network. So that's something that I'm going to want here. We will want power to hook all this stuff up, but we might as well just hook it up with heavy watt wire since we need to connect all of this stuff to heavy watt wire anyway. So I'm going to run that heavy watt wire down here, plug it into all these things. You might want to be careful and not let your smart batteries turn on for this yet until you're ready. So if you want to do that, you can just set these to zeros. Did I get that middle one? No. So if you do that, we'll just wait until it's time to actually turn all this stuff on. Same with the heavy watt wire to everything else. You can see the amount of power that the petroleum generators and the natural gas generators will produce compared to the coal ones. So yeah, that's definitely a pretty big difference. Let's see. Yeah, that's a waste. I should just do this the other way. I'm eventually going to be all on conductive wire, so I'm just going to hook it up to normal power right now. Because I don't want to have to spend all that metal ore for the really expensive heavy watt wire. And the conductive wire is going to be, the material for it anyway, is going to be fully renewable in just a little while, so might as well just do that. I'm going to put these on their own transformer, so we'll just hook it up like that. And for this, we need to make sure we're only pumping out water if it's above 500 kilograms. We'll deal with the automation for this later when it's time. Waiting for steel on that. We're almost vacuumed out here, but also you can stop at this point, only because we're only going to be pumping out of here if there's a certain pressure anyway, and the rest of that pressure is going to be filled with natural gas. So if there's a little bit of extra oxygen in there, I don't really care. I'll just turn these off. And then we're going to turn on our pumps for the natural gas too. Also with the natural gas, your first time pumping it out, you may have a little bit of extra gas in here also. But if you vacuumed out enough in here and you have your automation set to only pump out if it's a high enough pressure, then the excess stuff that you get in there is not really going to matter. So can just be a little bit callous or carefree about this. And also, worst case scenario, it'll damage your natural gas generators a little bit. What is happening? Okay, I don't remember the last time I saw that. All right, well, let's set our values for these anyway. That's funny. Definitely a bug. All right, so we have all these smart batteries hooked up to different things. This one's hooked up to the coal. This middle one is hooked up to the natural gas, and this far one is hooked up to the petroleum. The coal I've always set to about 80-20, which means that it'll turn on when we're at 20% power and it'll turn off when we're at 80% power. Because I want natural gas to be consumed more, I'm going to set it to 90-30, which means it will stay on for longer and it'll turn on earlier. So it'll turn this one on first, then it'll turn on the coal if needed, then it'll turn on the petroleum if needed. The petroleum I'm going to set to about 70-10, which means it's going to be like our last resort power source. It's not going to matter that much until we actually get petroleum flowing, but you know what I mean. We also need to replace any of our shipping stuff that we have here, so I'm just going to do that really fast. Set up our coal drops for this. Run this down. Whoops. There we go. We could maybe just run heavy watt wires to these. It is wasteful. I guess I shouldn't just start getting lazy for no reason, so I'll just do that with conductive wire. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to need is this room is going to get extremely hot. So we are going to need to run cooling. So I have already kind of started that up. With this other tank that we have in here, we can just run a line that kind of just snakes through this. If you need to, you can start replacing parts of this with radiant pipes, but we don't have a ton of refined metal, and I don't want to spend a lot refining it until we can do it a little bit more efficiently. So if you really need to, you can be excessive with the amount of radiating, like the style of radiating pipe of like this over top of these. This will help keep it cool for sure. But it does look like a lot. This is all very plentiful. We have plenty of sedimentary rock, which is what I'm building this out of, so it's not that big of a deal. And then if it starts not being enough, I can just lay some radiant... Whoa. I can just lay some radiant pipe in a handful of places, like maybe make a stripe here and like a stripe here or something like that, and that should deal with it pretty well. But yeah, I'm just going to hook this up also. Got these all right? Yeah. Obviously don't hook into your petroleum generators. We need to wait until we actually have petroleum flowing before we can do that. So, let's start pumping our natural gas, assuming this is all ready. We're just waiting for power, so let's get that done. And we'll set up the automation on this. We will encase this with, what's it called? Insulated tiles. But we need to probably do that from the inside. So let's get a ladder. And we could build our insulated tiles. If I can cut this off and just keep the natural gas in here, that would actually be kind of cool. So I'm going to do that. And then I'll build it kind of down and around like this. You could make this a lot smaller if you need to. You could also like build a layer of walls and then build another layer of walls closer in and build another layer of walls. And eventually just compact it down to this really tight spot. I'm not going to do that just because I'm feeling particularly lazy right now. So no reason to do it if I don't feel like it, I guess. And then we can go ahead and turn this on and start pumping. So as it pumps down, it'll get pumped into this area. We do need our setup for pumping it out and into our natural gas generators. And hopefully by the end of this video, assuming my duplicates hurry up, we will have all this stuff ready to go. Let me get rid of some of the other stuff up here too, because we don't necessarily need it anymore. And now that this is all hooked up, you can get rid of your old coal generators. You don't need to have both of them, so I'm going to get rid of that. So the benefits of doing something like this is all of these machines are going to be things my duplicates aren't really going to interact with that much, so I can kind of tuck them out of the way a little bit, kind of off to the bottom right of my base. Like if these are being loaded automatically, if these run fine, if all this stuff is on automation, duplicates really shouldn't need to go in here. So once I get this all set up, I can probably just set up a door on this side and lock it, unless I need to go in there for some maintenance. If I do need to go in there for maintenance, I can just unlock the door. But that'll help keep this area, you know, nice and contained, and I can cool it since this will be producing a hilarious amount of heat inside here. All right, here's our gas pump for actually pumping the natural gas to the generators. So we got that. Let's go ahead and drop a gas vent in here. And eventually we will replace this gas vent with a different one that can go up to higher pressures. Deconstruct these wires that are in here just because they're bothering me. And the way we're going to want to set up the automation in here, I'm going to set up an Atmos sensor, which is basically only going to allow this system to turn on if there's enough gas pressure here to make it worth pumping out. Just like we don't want to pump out a couple drops of water at a time, I don't want to pump out like a molecule of gas at a time. I'd rather pump out when this thing can run at its full capacity. So I only really want this to run if it's above like, I don't know, 350, something like that. And then the filter we can put on here just to make sure that it is at 350 for a good amount of time. I'm going to set this to about 40 seconds. You could probably, actually we could probably lower that a little bit, maybe 20. But the point is that that'll set it up so that when you are wanting to pump natural gas, it's only pumping when it's really worthwhile. And since we do have a little bit of other gases in here that we don't want to pump out, If it gets a little bit of excess carbon dioxide or oxygen or whatever else in here over time, this will prevent it too, because it'll need to be overly pressurized, and the tiles that are going to be pressurized at the right amount will be 99% natural gas. All right, this area I think is pretty good to go. I'm just going to put a door on this and lock it so there's no reason for my duplicants to go in here anymore. So that's good. My duplicants are starting to idle, so we'll get them busy here in just a second. Let's get this whole thing turned around. We might not necessarily see everything being pumped right away because this is still dormant. Another thing you can do is you can analyze this and it'll tell you when it's going to turn on and off. I don't know how much I really react to that information, so it's not like vital, but it's a thing, I guess. Something you can do. We also need to gracefully back our way out of this, so we need to replace the automation in here too. So I'm just going to wait until this is mostly pumped out. I think this is all natural gas in here now, so I don't need to worry too much. Let's go ahead and replace this now. I'm also placing some walls here because we need to gracefully get everything out of here. And we need to replace these tiles with something that's going to keep the water from leaking everywhere. So I'll show you a good trick of how to get that done. Let's get our Atmos sensor up here, which we can place, I guess it doesn't really matter that much. We could place it right here. And this is also going to be connected to a filter gate because I don't want it to just turn on and off without there actually being enough to pump out and make it worthwhile. So I'll put that up like that. Connect the Atmos sensor to the filter gate, and then if I set the filter on, or if I set the filter to, I don't know, like 15 seconds or something, I'm just going to cancel analysis on this so we can wall it. I don't really need to know that. You can find out if you want to. It'll basically tell you when the thing is going to become active or dormant or something like that. Only want to really pump this out. We could probably set this to 350 as well. Now that we have these tiles here, I don't want this all to spill out and destroy our liquid lock. So what I'm going to do is I will replace these two tiles. I should probably just be replacing one at a time, actually, because it is going to affect the water levels. And I think it will still remain. I guess we'll find out. I think another thing we could probably do is we could just skip this part, but I do want to mine that out, only because it's bothering me. I don't have a good reason. I don't need one. So down here, we're not going to see the whole system. Oh, we are seeing the whole system run. Okay, there was enough to actually overpressurize this. So yeah, natural gas generators are running, and they will be the first thing to run because their point that they turn on is when we're only at 30% power on our batteries. So that'll turn on first. If this can't push everything that we need, then it'll turn on the coal next. But the natural gas just took over. So while we actually have natural gas, that'll be our main form of power. So almost closed the loop. Let's finish this up really quick. And this is unfortunately tedious. You kind of have to just do this one piece at a time. So once we get that in there. There we go. If you don't have too much water, you can place one tile here and that will wall the whole thing. Then you could make this nice and neat afterwards if you want to, or you could just say, it's just a little oblong, who cares? And you could just leave it alone. So as long as you have a setup just something like this, all that matters is that the natural gas can get out and be pumped into your system. But this could be pretty much it. I don't need to worry about this anymore now. And as long as this is pumping natural gas and we have everything set up, it will go into our power system. So, yay, we're done! And our cooling is even running too. So if this produces a bunch of heat, this will keep it very cool. So yeah, we're in good shape. So yeah, that's that. Let's talk a little bit about what I'm going to be doing in the meantime, because this might be a little bit of a longer break until we have something else to do. The next objective that I want is I really need to find some renewable water. So I'm going to be digging everywhere on the map, and I'll just kind of like send little search parties out in each direction to try to reveal as much of the map as possible. And then once I find a geyser that I want to use, then we can do that. There is a saltwater geyser right here, but I don't want to have to use this if I don't have to because it comes out at such a high temperature. This is going to cost me so much just to cool down to the point that I can actually feed it to my blossoms, which is one of my bigger power, or rather water users. If I can find like a cool slush geyser or a salt slush geyser or a polluted water vent or something like that, I'd rather have that than something that is really hot. So this will be our absolute last resort if we have to use that, but if I can find something else, I'd rather do that. So that'll be my plan, and part of this is also going to be digging downward. Digging downward is the hardest thing to do, so I'll kind of give you an idea of how we're going to be doing that really quickly. I know this video is running a little bit long, but we might as well just show this because that's what I'm going to be doing. I will typically dig down like this. I'll plan on building ladders here in the same like spacing that I do for the rest of my base. And then once I get a handful of sections, I'll just do something like this. I'll put the floor down there. I'll dig out the floor first so that I have a place for all of the material to land, and then we will move our shipping system down another row so we can continue to ship all this material back into the center of our base. That's what I'll be doing. I'll be digging down quite a bit, and I'll be searching around for water. If we do get that water back, or if we do find that water by the time we're in the next video, I'll set it up, and I'll get it hooked into our system so we can at least have that sustainably running. Then I think we'll officially kind of be transitioning more into the mid-game, where like we're looking for more advanced things like oil, maybe breaching the surface here sometime soon. So yeah, there's a lot more to do, but we're in pretty good shape here so far, and I hope that your base is going well too if you've been watching this. So thanks for watching. I'll be back soon with another video, and take care.